Welcome back to the YouTube channel of Cascadia Living Wisdom. My name is David Benner. And today I want to share with you some thoughts on the relationship of truth and untruth. And once again, what I'll do is read some selections from my recent book, This and That. Let's begin. The Greek philosophers of the 6th century BC considered truth to be not simply a value or ideal, but a basic quality of being or a basic quality of existence. They suggested that when applied to human truthfulness, a statement could be said to be true when it conforms to external reality. Truth is that which is real. It is that which has no distortion. It corresponds perfectly to reality, to what actually is. Understood in this way, truth can be described as a quality of everything that exists, because everything that exists is as it is. Truth, therefore, is an alignment with the isness of life. But what then does this tell us about untruth? In the simplest terms, that which is untrue is that which lacks correspondence to reality. It distorts what truly is. It lacks alignment with the isness of life. Verbal lies are, of course, examples of untruth, but this isn't where the misalignment with reality begins. It starts with the lies we tell ourselves and with the ways we then shape our lives into a lie. When Jesus described that which comes from our mouths as flowing out of our hearts, he was pointing to the deep source of our falsity, deep within our being. If the foundations of our self are built around avoidance and dishonesties and distortions of reality, every aspect of who we are, not merely the words we speak, will be saturated with untruth. Distortions of reality usually begin with avoidance of things that are disturbing or unpleasant. The human capacity to deny, minimize, or distort unpleasant aspects of reality is boundless. We begin to do this at a very early age, but over time it becomes our unconscious default response. But what we're doing with each seemingly innocent denial, minimization, or distortion is deepening our misalignment with reality, and therefore with truth. We're choosing pretense, illusion, and fantasy over reality. While these things begin as conscious choices, they soon become unconscious and automatic. This means that they are ever more deeply part of us, much more deeply than we realize. In subtle but significant ways, we all become people of the lie. All of us, to at least some degree, prefer a reality of our own construction. We subtly shape reality in the light of our fantasies. And consequently, our world, our life, and our self involves more and more distortion and falsity. The truths we speak are simply manifestation of the untruth we live, and our very being is increasingly grounded in distortion of what truly is. In the mythic stories of the world, truth and lie are often presented as twins who are never far from one another. Listen to one such story. One day, two twin brothers stood by a river. One was named Truth, and the other was named lie. Lie challenged truth to a race. He then set out the rules to the challenge, telling his brother that they would both first remove their clothes and at the count of 3, dive into the freezing cold water and swim to the other side and back. Lie then counted to 3. Truth jumped in immediately, but lie did not. As truth began to swim across the river, lie put on truth's clothes and walked back into town dressed as truth. He proudly paraded around town, and everybody assumed he was truth. Eventually, truth made it back to shore, but his clothes were gone. All that was left for him was to wear lie's clothes. Refusing to dress himself as lie, truth walked back to town naked. Not surprisingly, people stared at him. Once he arrived in the town, he tried to explain what happened and told people he was truth. But because he was naked and uncomfortable to look at, people mocked him and refused to believe him. They chose to believe lie because he was dressed properly and he was more comfortable to look at. Stories such as this remind us that naked truth makes us uncomfortable because it exposes our nakedness and our lies. It comes as a challenge to a way of being that is not truly aligned with that which truly is. This story reminds us that both truth and lie are ways of living, not merely ways of speaking. Both start with an inner relationship to truth that flows into ways of being and doing. It also makes clear that we only appreciate the preciousness of truth when we recognize our own vulnerability to untruth. Either consciously or unconsciously, from time to time, we all prefer a reassuring lie over an inconvenient truth. And until we can admit this, we can never be people of the truth. Rabbi Rami Shapiro describes truth as that which leads us from alienation to integration, from fear to love, from exploiting others to justice for all. Truth, he says, transcends the binaries of sacred and profane, heaven and earth, creator and creation, and it allows us to cultivate an awareness wherein we may encounter every mundane, finite, nameable this as a manifestation of the infinite, manifestation of the ineffable, the divine, that of which we are all a part. The polarity of truth and untruth is a very hard one for me to hold. The both and. I find it almost impossible to think of them as being equally foundational to being. Like goodness and beauty, truth seems to me to be a basic property of existence. Even after pondering truth and untruth, it seems unavoidable to me that truth is primary and untruth secondary. Untruth seems to me to be a distortion of truth, but truth is not a variation or a distortion of untruth. And so I ask myself, how can I more fully lean into the space between these polarities? And what hidden wisdom might I access in that both and space? Pondering this, I realize that at least temporarily, I need to set aside my sense of the primacy of truth as a property of being and simply be more hospitable to untruth. And as soon as I adopt this more hospitable posture, I'm surprised to notice a softening in my judgment and a thawing in my resistance. I'm truly amazed. How could something that I was finding so hard to do suddenly become easier? The answer is that I released my judgment. This didn't require changing my opinion, just softening my attachment to judgment and being prepared to open myself in hospitality to other ways of understanding the issues at hand. And as soon as I did this, I noticed an even further thawing of my resistance. And so I dare to allow myself to set judgment aside and simply be a good host to untruth. As soon as I do this, I realize that this poses no threat to my moral character. It doesn't change my sense of the primacy of truth as a quality of being, but it does reduce my anger at untruth. This is really interesting because before trying this little experiment, I wasn't aware that untruth made me so angry. But that, it seems, is just the way judgment works. But then I sense another direction to take in order to be a good host to untruth. I think of untruth as a person, not a concept or an abstraction. I imagine untruth knocking on my door and me inviting this person to enter. I notice how easily I can welcome and engage this person with hospitality. Interestingly, at least for me, it's much easier to welcome a person than a concept. That tells me even more about myself, but I'll set that aside till later. However, as my resistance and judgmentalism subside, I encounter yet another surprise. For as I welcome untruth, I suddenly realize that I have welcomed myself. Untruth is not alien to me. It's part of me. I can view my own lack of truthfulness with compassion. This changes everything because I'm now able to see myself more truthfully. Something else begins to arise in me at this point. I also notice that there are two streams of consciousness running all the time in me, and I suspect in others. Let me call one experience and the other interpretation. Experience is the flow of the moment-by-moment events that unfold in our lives. Some are the result of our actions and some not. Humans are storytelling creatures, and the primary level at which this storytelling takes place is the stories we make to make sense of our experience. We all do this all the time, hardly even noticing that we're doing it. But our stories are usually built around a bias that's designed to minimize and reinterpret things that are incongruent with our identity. Experience is nonfiction, but our stories are definitely fiction. They are our interpretation of our experience, and they are built so often on untruths that form a deep part of our sense of our identity, of who we truly are. This happens for the most part beyond our awareness. We would never call it lying because it seems so private that even we hardly even notice it. But the stories we tell ourselves shape our identity. They also distort reality, sometimes in small ways, but often in much more major ways. This, I suspect, is the basis of our lack of truthfulness. The most important untruth for all of us is the lies we tell ourselves. Lies that we tell others are an offshoot of them. Full truth is more than the absence of untruth. It is being in full alignment with what truly is. It's then living this truth by restoring it to its foundational place in our being. Truth is not something we possess. It's a quality of being that flows through us and touches all those whose lives touch ours. Living the truth will always be grounded in living with love and compassion. Wisdom is only authentic when it expresses love, and love is only authentic when it reflects wisdom. So truth without love is simply not truth. When truth is understood as not merely the avoidance of lies, but a deep inner alignment with what truly is, our doing flows effortlessly from our being. This is truth made real by living. This is what it means to live and to be the truth. This is true freedom, and it emerges from living in alignment with reality and the larger wholes of our existence. Well, I hope that gives you something to think about, and I hope that it and ideally reading of the book and the other polarities that it examines helps you also move from this or that to this and that thinking, from either or to both and. So bye for now. Be well.